Whoopi told John Neely Kennedy, "Go back to the Bayou" on live TV. His calm response stunned. The studio hummed with anticipation, its polished set gleaming under the harsh glare of the View's lights, but the brightness seemed to falter before reaching John Neely Kennedy, seated just left of center. Silence settled not warm, but charged heavy with the promise of something about to shift. A small badge, shaped like Louisiana's distinctive outline, glinted faintly beneath the collar of his understated blue shirt, simple, worn at the edges, steeped in meaning. Kennedy sat still, eyes calm, shoulders relaxed, a stark contrast to his usual Capitol Hill sharpness. He wasn't here to pitch policy or trade sound bites. He carried something deeper legacy. Across from him, Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward, her smile wide but taut, laced with an edge she couldn't quite mask. "So, John," she said, her voice playful yet pointed, still wearing that little Bayou badge, "don't take this the wrong way, but haven't we moved past that? Go back to the Bayou already?" A cautious ripple of laughter spread through the audience, uncertain testing the air, the kind that hesitates to commit. Kennedy didn't flinch. His gaze held hers steady, letting the tension coil before he reached up and gently pulled the badge into view. It caught the light not flashy, but honest, raw. "This was my father's," he said, voice low, measured. "He wore it every day until he passed. My grandfather wore it before him in Louisiana, when times were hard, when speaking freely could cost you, when standing firm was the only way to survive. Before that, my great-grandfather wore a carved version in a state some still think we don't fully belong to." The room didn't just quiet, it collapsed into silence. A co-host shifted uncomfortably in her chair, the creak loud in the stillness. A floor manager backstage hissed, "Cut to commercial." The director didn't budge. Not now. Not in this moment. "No," Kennedy continued. "We don't move past it. We carry it." He rolled the badge between his fingers, not for show, but as if it were part of his very breath. "I wear this because history doesn't vanish, just because it makes folks uneasy." No one spoke. No one dared. The audience, expecting light political sparring, realized they were witnessing something else: presence, not performance. Whoopi blinked, then let out a quick, awkward chuckle. "That got heavy fast," she said, grasping for levity. It didn't land. Something had shifted in the room, and Kennedy hadn't come to charm or counterpunch. He came to hold the line with something stronger than wit: truth. Unapologetic, unshaken, undeniable. The invitation had come quietly, an email with a subject line that read, "The View invites Senator Kennedy to discuss legacy and American values." His longtime aide, Marcus, wasn't buying it. "It's a trap," he said, squinting at the screen in their modest office. "They want the folksy senator, the southern drawl for sound bites, but they're fishing for a misstep, a viral clip." Kennedy stood by the window, hands in pockets, gazing at the city skyline. He didn't answer immediately. "They're expecting the Kennedy they see in debates," Marcus pressed. "But if they push the right button, they'll get a moment they can spin." Kennedy turned his face calm, not smiling, but at peace. "Then maybe I show them what restraint looks like," he said softly. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was the badge, its edges softened by decades of sweat and memory. "He gave this to me when I started in public service," Kennedy said, thumb tracing its outline. "Told me, don't let their spotlights shift your compass. I'm not here to fight, but I'm not going in unarmed." Marcus exhaled, sinking into a chair. "Do it your way, then. No handlers, no prep, just you." By morning, the internet was buzzing. Why's Kennedy on The View? What's he selling? He's too old school for this. He'll get baited. Kennedy ignored it all, riding to the studio in silence, badge tucked beneath his collar, his mind not on rehearsed answers, but on presence. The car pulled into the back lot. He stepped out alone, no entourage, surprising the crew who expected a senator's usual swarm of staff. He nodded politely, walked to the stage and waited. No makeup touch-ups, no pre-interview run-through. Truth doesn't need rehearsal. The red light blinked live, and the set soft-curated all pastel colors and plush chairs felt like a facade waiting to crack. Kennedy's presence alone began to chip at its gloss. Whoopi leaned in, her grin practiced a veteran of 1,000 talk show battles. "You've faced senators held the floor with a single stare," she said, her tone teasing, but loaded. "So, when did you decide to become a preacher with a badge?" The audience laughed on cue, a loud orchestrated sound, not quite natural. Kennedy didn't flinch. He let the silence settle first, as he always did. Then, in a voice smooth as steel and just as firm, "Some folks wear things for attention. I wear mine to remember." The laughter died mid-air. The rhythm faltered. The air shifted subtle, but real. Whoopi tilted her head, eyebrow raised. "The man who's gone toe-to-toe with bureaucrats is here talking memory." Another chuckle from the crowd, but it felt staged, hollow. Kennedy shifted slightly, not defensive, but grounded. "I've faced power," he said, "but carrying roots with dignity means more." The room fell still. He looked out, not scanning, but connecting his eyes, meeting those of strangers in the crowd. "You know the saying, it's not about how hard you hit, but how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." A few audience members mouthed the words, nodding, smiling faintly. "That's no script," Kennedy continued. "I said it in rooms without cameras, when I lost family, when friends faced trials, when the world kept turning like nothing happened." Whoopi's smile tightened, the moment slipping from her grasp. "I'm not here to preach," Kennedy added. "Memory deserves a voice that doesn't waver." The audience didn't clap or laugh. They listened. A man in the third row lowered his phone. A woman touched her chest, eyes soft. The lights felt too harsh, the set too glossy, too artificial for the weight of the moment. Whoopi cleared her throat. "Got deep. Quick, didn't it?" Kennedy nodded once. Memory doesn't wait for a convenient slot. The first round was over. No applause, no viral quip. Just truth, heavy and undeniable. The tension hung like a storm cloud held at bay by Kennedy's calm. Cameras caught every nuance, the faint shift in expressions, the audience leaning forward, drawn in despite themselves. Whoopi wavered her opening jab, leading to a conversation she hadn't scripted. The badge, now fully visible, stood as a testament to Louisiana's resilience through floods, hardship, and unyielding community spirit. Kennedy's voice slow, like the Bayou's flow, deepened the room's reflection. Backstage producers exchanged glances, torn between cutting away and letting the raw authenticity unfold, sensing it could resonate far beyond the studio. His words moved like the Mississippi, steady and unrelenting, showing legacy isn't flaunted, but carried quietly lessons of the past, guiding the present with grace. The silence wasn't empty. It was a bridge from polished TV to raw reality, sparked by a badge and Kennedy's unflinching honesty. Co-hosts held back, letting his response sink in, while audience members shifted, some nodding, others pondering their own heirlooms, lockets, rings, faded photos, tying them to their roots. Whoopi's chuckle rang hollow, her control fading as Kennedy turned the space into a shared sanctuary. The lights softened or seemed to the badge glinting like a beacon of truth amid the set's manufactured shine. He spoke of Louisiana not as a punchline but a source of strength, Bayou's teaching endurance, storms forging resilience, community outweighing isolation. The audience, a slice of America, felt heritage's universal pull, recalling personal symbols of pride. Kennedy's reply wasn't defense, but affirmation, a gentle yet firm claim that roots deserve honor, not dismissal. The initial laughter faded, replaced by a respectful quiet that spoke to his words' impact. Earlier, Marcus's warning of a trap rang true, but Kennedy trusted truth's power honed through years of service where integrity trumped spectacle. Now live that faith, shone the badge, his silent ally. The director watched cameras catching the lines on Kennedy's face. Experience, not age. Co-hosts' banter stilled. Whoopi's smile softened eyes, showing intrigue, perhaps admiration for his poise. The badge embodied navigating life's turns like bayous winding through challenges. His voice built bridges, inviting thought over reaction. A front-row audience member, once chuckling, now clasped hands, seeing jest turn to insight. Kennedy transformed ambush into grace, stunning all, setting a stage for a conversation that would linger. The silence held reflections, Kennedy, letting it breathe his calm, a force in the tension. Whoopi's quip landed soft, the badge centering the talk heavy with history. Mockery became connection, his composure a lesson uniting the room. The director, captivated, kept rolling, recognizing rare magic. Kennedy's eyes invited reflection on words' weight, remembrance's power. The badge evoked cypress trees, humid air, unyielding spirits. The hush held anticipation, his quiet authority commanding. This sparked a talk beyond the studio, proving calm responses carry power. The set's gloss cracked to reveal humanity. Kennedy, steady his drawl, warm, drawing listeners like a Bayou storyteller. Whoopi navigated uncharted waters, her tools weak against his flow. The audience mirrored, some dabbing eyes, others nodding, united by the message. The badge pulsed with life, a conduit for ancestor tales, tilling soil, weathering storms, building in tough terrain. His response, born of conviction, embodied values, honesty, respect, courage, without aggression. The conflict diffused with finesse, turning mishap to civility. The segment balanced calm's power, stunning and inspiring. This introduction hooked, engaged, transformed, all in intense live minutes. Light danced across his shirt, the badge a subtle spotlight. Coffee's scent wafted from the green room. Distant traffic rumbled, contrasting the studio's intensity. His posture relaxed, yet alert, eyes sharp, yet kind, reflected wisdom from bayous and halls. Whoopi's cards grew irrelevant questions, paling against his flow. A whispered awe noted calm's command. Kennedy waited, restraint embodied the badge's boot shape, evoking humid summers, resilient communities, unshakable bonds. Not about ratings or clips, but connection bridging divides with honesty, respect. He stunned with poise, power in measured truth. Silence was golden, a canvas for reflection, pausing for the greater story ahead. This foundation captivated, preparing for deeper emotional depths. Kennedy leading with a presence that demanded attention and earned admiration. Kennedy leaned forward just a bit, his eyes holding that steady gaze that seemed to pull the entire room into focus, and with the weight of the badge still resting against his chest like an anchor. He reached for the canvas satchel beside his chair, the kind worn thin from years of real use, not some prop dusted off for TV. And the audience shifted almost as one, sensing the air thicken with something more personal on the horizon. cameras adjusting subtly to capture the zipper's slow reveal of a pair of old leather gloves cracked at the seams. Knuckles smoothed from labor folded, as if they remembered the grip that once defined them.
"These aren't from any fancy debate hall," Kennedy said, his voice dipping into that warm southern cadence, like a storyteller settling in by the fire, holding one glove up gently, letting the moment hang before diving in. "I wore these back when I was just starting out young and full of fire, doing the kind of work that breaks you down to build you up, tilling soil, fixing fences, the stuff that teaches you life. Ain't about talking tough. It's about showing up when it's hard." He paused, his thumb tracing a worn edge voice, controlled but laced with memory, and I pulled them on. The week my uncle passed, he was a simple farmer, no fame or fortune, but the type who'd share his last meal with a stranger in need. And when he was gone, I didn't go shouting it from rooftops or seeking comfort online. I headed straight to the field and worked till these gloves were soaked with sweat and blood, not to erase the hurt, but to honor it. Every blister, a silent tribute to the man who taught me that strength comes from keeping on even when the world's weighing heavy. The studio went pin-drop quiet, no quips cutting through, no lights dimming for effect, just the raw pull of a story that hit home. And Kennedy laid the gloves on the table, not dramatically, but matter-of-factly, like evidence in a trial of the soul. "I don't tote this badge for looks," he tapped it once, "and these gloves ain't for theatrics. They're proof that the trials we've weathered don't get hidden away. They shape who we stand as today." The crowd held still not from obligation, but because stirring felt like shattering glass. And in that stretch of live TV talk of grit, wasn't glossed over, it was laid bare, a call to reckon with what builds us. The gloves rested there like quiet sentinels, not relics of glory but markers of everyday battles. And the camera crew, hardened by years of segments, zoomed in closer, tracing the leather's scars as if they were lines on a map leading to truth. While the audience transformed devices, forgotten postures alert, no longer passive viewers, but part of the unfolding, unwilling to let a word slip by, they were immersed now, present in the narrative. Whoopi cleared her throat, the noise slicing the hush like an unwelcome guest. "Well," she ventured, aiming for that trademark lightness, "that's a curveball from you." "John?" A few uneasy laughs bubbled up, but died, quick more nerves than amusement, and Kennedy didn't engage the bait, his focus drifting to the faces in the seats, seeking not applause but resonance. And then, from the left edge of the studio, a figure stood, an older man in his late 60s, boots scuffed from honest toil jacket, faded hands bearing the calluses of a life far from spotlights. The place went rigid. This wasn't in the script, no cue for audience interaction, and a producer motioned frantically to kill the feed, but the director whispered back, "Roll with it," as the man moved into the aisle, voice shaky but resolute. "He's more than a title, you see." The room tilted toward him, rapt, and he pressed on. "I was on a community build in Louisiana, things falling apart, tempers flaring high. But this fella, pointing straight at Kennedy, hung back. After the dust settled, sat with a young family down on luck, spoke to them like they mattered most in the world. No press around, no glory to grab, just pure decency. The air grew thicker. Everyone hanging on. He didn't owe it. The man swallowed hard. "Lost my brother to an illness. Not long ago, he was my rock. Ain't shared that till this minute. But watching a man hold his ground with roots intact, without making it a sob story that speaks volumes." Kennedy stayed silent, nodding with humble respect, eyes averted in deference, and the man lowered himself back the seat, creaking under the release, like the tension easing just a notch. Whoopi's cards trembled faintly,
in her hold. They were deep in uncharted territory. Now the script ashes a narrative alive and rewriting itself. A lady in row 2 leaned to her friend, whispering, "This feels real, not like TV at all." And a fellow in the rear arms, once barred in skepticism, now rested elbows on knees, palms up, as if receiving wisdom unasked. Kennedy broke the quiet, at last. "I never set out for idol status." His tone raw yet, even just aimed to craft something authentic, unforgeable. He scanned the space lights, now seeming gentler, truth softening the harsh beams. But candor, he noted, packs more punch than any podium rant I've delivered. No cheers, no giggles, just the hush of authenticity finally voiced, and the shift completed. They aligned with Kennedy, the studio transcending stagecraft for sanctity. Earned via esteem, not pity. Kennedy remained composed, badge bold on his chest gloves, as tributes between him and the onlookers, and from the middle block, a youthful voice pierced, cracked and vulnerable. No disruption, but admission, gazes turned. Kennedy lifted his head, attentive, not alarmed. A lad in early 20s rose, hoodie, rumpled fists clenching cloth like salvation. "No mic, wait, no approval sought. I bought into roots once, into bigger pictures," he uttered. Co-host eyed, backstage warily, yet producers refrained. This pulsed vital. Kin always claimed, "We're survivor stock, our yarn spins pre this nation's labels." Kennedy absorbed, mute, but my sister left us, eyes misting, all turned farce, faith fled, relevance, nil. Locked on Kennedy, yet your glove talk. That grit, no gloss or rescue gulp, heavy, unsure, full faith returns, but ages since I crave it. Not splashy, not shareable. Pure guts, Kennedy avoided. Spectacle stood initial time approaching throng, as fellow flame-touched, not official, pausing near no fanfare. "Mere being, you've commenced already," he offered. Lads inhaled, snagged, but endured. Kennedy faced assembly, tone richer, rooted minds not to sway. I came, but survival. Echo voice craved by some afar. Lad descended, gradual palms quivering, as candor-rooted neighbors extended, not console link. Whoopi mute, yet eyes sans quip hunt. Fisher hint unease, remorse, dawn. Kennedy reseated, badge mild shine gloves, moorings past trial emblems, studio stir. Subtle resolve, ample. Hush, fog lingered, sacred void. Not Kennedy seated, yet room upright, emotional, twixt truth, lineage evaded by chat formats. Whoopi cards, flipped tone crisp now, what words, edged gloves, pain storms, quiet, hall, abrupt mentor, semi-chortle, semi-dare. Kennedy endured real, toted, eye serene. Strain rewound, throng, tensed her thrust. On John Saint's sinners debated strife orations thousand, this genuine grip-like seems cranium wag, reclaim, strive. Chamber, chill, still, excessive. Tardy, retract, Kennedy phrases, descend, post-crumble. Debris, cameras, cease, resolve, evaporates, not. Viewers affirmed, rear, dame murmured authentic adversity, not grasping, non-existent, feign, actual act. Phrase imprinted. Whoopi lips parted, sealed directing no more immersed. Folios obsolete light, intended muttered, near self. Light false, not verity, occasionally, fissures, seeps, platform not. Hush, profound, immovable illumination, buzz, soul garb, rustle, as inclined, required, unrecognized, imbibed. Alternate presenter, hitherto, tacit, mild, distinct, correct, he's, Whoopi, lateral, peak. Kennedy return debut. Grin vanished, ousted by capitulation. Kennedy advanced. Combat, not arrived. Mute, neither, persist. Occasion performer misconstrued. None mitts, accessories. Not tenacity, practiced, not. Presenter, visitor, resembled visitor. Unanticipated, reflection, resembled. None stirred. Uttered had, what mass air-suspended incense akin. Whoopi, rigid cadence, lost folios, shattered shield. Faint chime, twinkle. Backdrop promo intended. Altered abrupt, tech erroneous, doc reverse, futile, stark, pale, ebony, ex-serviceman. Comrade, prime duty, lost conclude, Eve planned. Kennedy, fortitude, frailty, not discuss, observe additional day, perhaps postpone. Chamber inhaled, unified, noiseless wheeze. Pulses myriad, halted joint. Kennedy display pivoted, unflinching, sensed. Visible, not countenance immobile. How instant physique entered ground tethered. Associates astonished. Whoopi display, regarded lips, slight agape. Commenced, halted, voice formerly acute, poised, now mortal, denuded, exposed. Kennedy ascended. Crowd not viewed. Lens direct. Somehow chamber not addressed anymore. Solitary locale, serene, filament-clinging individual to conversed seemed. Observing, if tone subdued, yet moored. Hear me. Necessitata. Designation, ignorant. I tender stated, endured. You've what ignorant I. Mitts adjacent glimpsed. Yet upward regarded, when tone bore heftier than spectacle chamber, entire possesses adversity like sense. What comprehend, but. Murmur traversed studio veil descended akin. Lens personnel broadcast veterans seasoned, motion ceased. Me in trust, to necessitate not persisted. Respiring, persist you reality and trust, not, that is. Minor advanced paced. Gap impossible, bridge might as meet never might, individual, and him amid. Presently, globe this from depart, not base, forfeiting, never fracturing, almost tone, single minimally retaliate you've till. In a charged, almost sacred silence, the show ceased to feel like television and became something rare and worth preserving. No applause came, yet the audience rose gradually moved by an unspoken gravity. Kennedy did not seek victory or bask in approval. He simply stood steady, the Louisiana badge in hand, embodying quiet conviction. Whoopi, unsettled, but not antagonistic, seemed to recognize the depth of the moment, asking if he had come seeking triumph. He gently shook his head, saying no. The studio remained calm, reverent. The exchange leaving no winners or losers, only a shared sense of truth that lingered long after. The studio held its breath, the silence so thick it seemed to bend the air, a sacred pause that made the glossy set of the view feel like a fragile shell around something far more real. And from the heart of the audience, the young man's voice rose again, steadier now, but still carrying the raw edge of grief, building on the vulnerability that had already shattered the room's polished veneer. After my sister passed, I thought faith in anything bigger was gone for good. He said, his hoodie sleeves rolled up, hands clutching the fabric like it was his only tether to the moment. But hearing you talk about those gloves, that strength, without sugarcoating the pain, it's like a light flickering on in a place I thought was dark forever. I don't know if I'm all the way back to believing, but for the first time in years, I want to try. The room clung to his words, no one daring to break the spell. The silence a canvas for his courage. And Kennedy, his Louisiana badge catching a faint glint under the studio lights, offered a simple nod, his voice warm and anchored. "That's where it starts, son, naming the hurt, without letting it claim you." And the young man nodded back, a spark of resolve lighting his eyes as those around him reached out with quiet gestures of support. Hands brushing shoulders not to comfort, but to connect, weaving a web of shared resilience that turned personal pain into a collective strength. The air grew heavier, the moment teetering on the edge of something profound. But the true peak arrived without warning. A soft beep cut through the set, followed by a flicker on the screen. Behind the hosts meant for sponsor ads or smooth transitions, but now hijacked by an unscripted error, a tech glitch pulling up a raw feed in bold white text on black. "I'm a veteran. Lost my best friend in service, was set to end things tonight. But hearing Kennedy talk, endurance like it's no weakness, maybe I'll hold off one more day." The studio inhaled as one, a gasp without sound, hundreds of heartbeats suspended in unison, and Kennedy turned to the screen, his calm unbroken, but his stillness deepening, as if the words had rooted him to the ground, their weight sinking into his core without a flinch. The co-hosts froze, their usual banter silenced. Whoopi, staring at the display, her sharp wit stripped to something raw and human, her lips parting as if to speak, but closing without a word, the moment too vast for her usual quips. Kennedy rose slowly, not facing the crowd, but locking eyes with the camera lens as if reaching through the screen to one soul clinging to a fraying thread. His presence turning the broadcast from a talk show into a lifeline, and in a voice low but unyielding. "If you're out there watching, I need you to hear me clear. I don't know your name or the battles you've carried." He glanced at the gloves on the table, their cracked leather a silent witness. "But I know what it's like when hardship fills every corner, like there's no air left to breathe." A hush fell like a veil, the camera crew, veterans of live TV, halting their subtle adjustments, caught in the sanctity of the exchange. "You don't have to believe in me," Kennedy continued, "but believe in this. You're still here, still breathing, and that's not nothing. It's the first step to pushing back." He stepped forward just a fraction, as if to bridge the impossible distance to that unseen viewer. "Don't walk away from this world just yet. Not till you've thrown one more punch against the dark." The silence was hallowed, not empty, charged with a power that transcended the set's artificial glow, and Whoopi, blinking rapidly, clutched her water glass like an anchor, not sipping, but gripping it, as if questioning her right to the moment's grace. In the control room, no one touched the cut switch or called for a commercial. It no longer felt like television, more like a crossroads of human struggle and hope, a blend of sanctuary and battlefield where lives hung in balance. The screen faded slowly to black. No music or outro, just the lingering image of a man who hadn't come to perform but to pierce the noise, delivering a message not meant for air, but more vital than any scripted segment. And in that instant, the view shed its showbiz skin, becoming a vessel that might just tether a life to tomorrow. The message vanished, but the electric hush lingered profound and unshaken, and Kennedy stood firm, one hand resting lightly on the gloves, the other brushing the badge, not triumphant, but rooted, grounded in the truth of the moment. No one said, "Wow." No one clapped. The absence spoke louder than words. Then, one by one, they rose, not prompted or for applause, but because staying seated felt impossible under such weight. A woman near the front hugged her arms tight, as if shielding something fragile. A man in the third row, once skeptical with crossed arms, now stood slowly unfolding them in quiet reverence, the ripple spreading row by row, raw and respectful. No applause, because the moved don't break sacred moments with noise. Kennedy scanned the crowd, not smiling, seeking understanding over adulation. The audience wasn't reacting to politics, but to something rarer: truth, without spin, hardship without pity, strength without fanfare. A sight long vanished from screens. Whoopi stayed seated longest, her note cards limp in her lap, like crumpled armor. Her gaze locked on Kennedy. No defiance left, only introspection. Perhaps a trace of regret flickering in her eyes. "You didn't come here to win anything, did you?" she murmured, her voice soft, almost afraid to disturb the air. Kennedy shook his head, once deliberate and steady. "No. I came because someone out there might need to know they're not alone in feeling something real. It don't make you broken. It makes you whole." The pause was reverent, not awkward and without cue. Whoopi rose too, not to reclaim her stage or feign alliance, but because moments like this demand you stand. The room held its stillness not from fear, but respect, and Kennedy took a deep breath, controlled, then sat, not because the moment was done, but because it had landed. The gloves sat unchanged, but their meaning had shifted. They were no longer mere relics, but proof that wounds heal when seen, not hidden. For the first time in years, the view had no arguments to spin, no angles to push, just a room full of people standing for a man who reminded them that feeling doesn't weaken. It fortifies, setting the stage for a deeper reckoning yet to unfold. The studio lights buzzed faintly, the only sound besides the rustle of clothing, as people leaned in, absorbing what they hadn't known they needed, and the air felt charged with possibility, not tension, as Kennedy's words echoed beyond the set, touching lives unseen, proving that a single voice, steady and true, could shift the course of a moment, maybe even a life. The studio lights dimmed ever so slightly, or perhaps it was the collective exhale of the room that made everything feel softer, more human, as John Neely Kennedy sat there, the Louisiana badge still resting against his chest, like a quiet emblem of unyielding roots, and the gloves on the table no longer just leather, but symbols of endurance that had bridged gaps between strangers. The audience stood in waves, their silence a testament to the shift from a talk show scripted for quick laughs and hot takes to a space where raw truth had taken center stage. And Kennedy, his eyes steady but kind, looked out at them not as a senator seeking votes, but as a man sharing a piece of his soul. Whoopi, now standing too, her note cards forgotten on the floor, like relics of a bygone plan, met his gaze with something new, not the practiced host's grin, but a vulnerability that mirrored the room's transformation. And in that moment, Kennedy reached down, picking up one of the gloves with deliberate care, the leather creaking softly under his fingers, and extended it toward her. Not as a challenge or a trophy, but as an offering, a bridge across the divide her words had started. "Take this," he said gently, his voice carrying that folksy warmth honed from Louisiana evenings. "You don't have to carry it like I do, but maybe it'll remind you that pain shared ain't pain doubled. It's halved. And forgiveness starts when we stop pretending the scars ain't there." Whoopi hesitated, her hand hovering for a beat, then accepted the glove, holding it like it was fragile glass, her fingers tracing the cracks as if reading a story she hadn't expected to find. And for the first time her eyes softened fully. "I didn't mean to mock what matters to you," she admitted, voice stripped of its usual edge. "Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the talk, we forget how to just listen." Kennedy nodded. "Once we all do that sometimes, but the real strength comes in pausing long enough to hear the other side, to see the humanity behind the words." The room remained standing. The silence not awkward, but profound, a shared acknowledgement that what had unfolded wasn't entertainment. It was a lesson in living. And Kennedy turned to the audience, his posture relaxed, yet commanding. Folks, what we've shared here today ain't about me or any one story. It's about carrying our roots with dignity, facing the Bayou's twists without losing our way, and remembering that calm in the face of a storm don't mean you're weak. It means you're rooted deep enough to bend, but not break. He paused, letting the words settle like rain on parched earth. And that's the takeaway when someone throws shade or doubt your way. You don't have to shout back or swing wild. You meet it with truth, steady and real, 'cause that's what builds bridges, what turns mockery into understanding. And in a world full of noise, that quiet strength is what endures. The audience absorbed it, some nodding slowly, others wiping subtle tears, the veteran's message still echoing in their minds. A reminder that words spoken with heart can reach into the shadows and pull someone back from the edge. And Kennedy continued, think about it in your own lives. Next time you're faced with a jab at work, a disagreement at home, or just the weight of a bad day. Pause. Listen. Respond from your core, not your anger. It's that patience, that authenticity, that fosters real connection, that turns strangers into allies. And ultimately, that's how we grow, not just as individuals, but as a community, a nation even united by the simple act of honoring each other's journeys. Whoopi, still holding the glove, looked at him with a newfound respect. The set no longer a battleground, but a shared ground. And as the lights held steady, the room began to stir gently, not with applause, but with quiet murmurs of agreement, the kind that signal a shift in perspective, a seed planted for change. Kennedy sat back, the badge and remaining glove beside him, his work not done in triumph but in quiet influence. And as the segment wrapped without fanfare, the audience filed out, not buzzing with gossip, but reflecting on how one man's calm had redefined what it means to stand firm, teaching that in adversity, patience isn't passive. It's powerful, encouraging everyone to apply it daily, to listen more, judge less, and build bonds that last, fostering unity and personal growth in a divided world. The story didn't end with a bang, but with that enduring quiet, a ripple that would carry far beyond the studio walls, reminding all who witnessed it that true legacy isn't in the spotlight. It's in the lives, touched the hearts, steadied, and the lessons lived out long after the cameras fade to black. As the crew wrapped up, whispers of awe circulated, but Kennedy simply gathered his satchel, nodded to Whoopi with a small smile of reconciliation, and walked off. Set the way he came, alone, unassuming, a living example that authenticity and restraint can turn even the harshest words into opportunities for healing and understanding, a message that viewers at home would carry into their own challenges, applying the principle of calm response to build stronger relationships, greater empathy, and a more cohesive society. In the end, the Bayou badge and the gloves weren't just items. They were metaphors for carrying one's history with pride, facing ridicule with grace, and emerging stronger. An educational beacon that patience in the face of provocation isn't weakness. It's the foundation of true progress, urging listeners to embrace it in their daily lives for personal development and collective harmony. The chapter closed not on drama, but on that subtle power, leaving an imprint that encouraged reflection and action, proving that stories like this don't just entertain, they educate, inspire, and unite.